take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thanks for being here. My name's Pete Ross. I've been at Stryker for almost 10 years now. I'm a senior tender and contract specialist. I'm also the chair of our Veterans Association, and I served in the Army from 2006 to 2012, most of which was in Canberra at DSD. You can see a photo of me there, my last year of service, looking thoroughly impressed with my life choices, but things are a little bit better now. So I'm not sure if you've had a look at what Stryker is or what we do, but long story short, we're a global medical device company. Our founder was Dr. Homer Stryker. He was an orthopedic surgeon. He was also actually a veteran of World War I. And in 1941, he founded his company to make medical devices because he was an inventor as well. And so we now have 50,000 employees worldwide, 1,000 in Australia, and we do manufacturing all the way up to post-install support. So what that means is basically anything that goes in a person, an implant like a hip or a knee or a shoulder, plates, screws, we make all of that. We also make anything that goes in a hospital, just about. So power tools, endoscopy cameras, theatre lights, pendants, operating tables, just about anything you see in the back of an ambulance as well. That's what Stryker does. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to say this is a shameless plug for us trying to get you to come and work at Stryker, first and foremost. But as part of that, what we're going to try and get across is how your skills translate to the corporate world. Because if there's one thing I've found attending defense transition seminars and just talking to veterans post-separation, everyone seems to have this idea that they're only good to be a copper, a fiery, a paramedic, or maybe work for a defense contractor. And that's just so untrue. So hopefully today we're going to show you how your skills translate to the corporate world and the kind of career that you might have. And as part of that, we're going to have a few guys talk about their experiences successfully transitioning and the career they've got now as well. To finish off, we'll go into next steps and further sessions, and then we'll do a Q&A where we'll turn the recorder off and we'll just talk real to each other, essentially. And at this point, I'm going to pass over to Matt Poppleton. He's our former chair, and take it away, Pops.
G'day guys, how you going? Look, thanks so much, Pete, and thanks everyone for joining us. Look, I suppose for my part, this is a pretty informal little thing we're going to have today, but for my part, I'm going to talk about the association we actually have here at Stryker, literally how we formed, why we formed, and what are our major or our main mission and objectives that we're trying to achieve. But look, we've got a bit of a unique situation with the association because Stryker, as people are saying, we're a medical technologies company. We're not a company that directly contracts defence. We're not a company that actually gets anything from defence itself. So we're in a bit of a unique position. And even when and I'll talk about this shortly, we had a visit down to Parliament House and spoke to a number of members of Parliament about this. And even they were really surprised at the fact that we're a company that's kind of discovered its veterans together, and we formed this association not so that we can get benefits from contracting back to defence or anything like that, but we did it purely and simply to support our veterans and to encourage more veterans to join our company, because we know just how the unique skills and the values that our ex-service people, not just from the ADF, but we've got people from the States and from the UK and various ex-service people right throughout the world. But the Veterans Association really started as part of our employment resource group to support each other as our prime. And as we've grown and developed, we've kind of started to shift our focus out to try and get more companies to do what we're doing to support veterans, recognise veterans and bring them in. But as Pete said, one of the prime things we're really trying to do today is just to introduce ourselves and really encourage you guys to look into career pathways outside of, as people are saying, just the normal things that defence people think. So as you can see in that photo there, that was actually a photo taken of myself and James Doyle, who are his executive sponsor down at the Australian War Memorial. We've got a motto, we've got a mission, and our logo that you can see there is the compass. And the reason why we've chosen the compass, because it really does symbolise, what we really here to do, and our prime objective of really supporting our veterans to navigate that transition from defence and being ex-service and as part of defence, and then going into the corporate world and going into their civil lives. And we thought the compass was just a nice little symbol to have to say that we really are here to try and guide, support, and help. So thanks, Pete. Next slide. So a little bit, I suppose, about me and my background. I started way back in the old days, in the late 80s, early 90s, as a trauma nurse, and joined the army as a young fellow in the regular army in '92, and joined a unit called the parachute surgical team, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. And one PST was a phenomenal thing for me. It was kind of like and still is the highlight of my professional career. I was a nursing officer in a infantry parachute battalion group, running a trauma team, jumping out of aircraft. You see down the bottom left-hand corner there, that's my warrant officer, CSM Kearnsey. Still keep in contact with him, and that's my dad up in the top left-hand corner. And Dad also had a bit of a service history as well. And that's just a simple little photo of what the unit looked like when we set up in the field. But I went from regular army into reserves, and it was a huge thing to transition out of the army. So next photo there. So I went from being in the regular army in the reserves. I went from being a trauma nurse into decided to do something a little bit different, but still along the healthcare professional areas, and became a chiropractor. So I did a Master of Chiropractic, ended up practicing as a solo practitioner for about 15 years, was lecturing at university, started a PhD through a Masters of Research. And even I found that the transition from a nursing officer into being a chiropractor, although it was similar down the health professional career, it was during that period of time I was incredibly lost. It was like I really lost my identity. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for people when they're getting out and they're moving in an area that they've got no kind of connection to, like I had. At least it was healthcare. So from 2015, I decided to do something a little bit different, and I wanted to take on the next challenge. And I joined Stryker. Now, I'd never heard about Stryker before. I had no idea how the hell a company like Stryker could even want an ex-nurse, like an ex-trauma nurse in the army, an ex-chiropractor, etc. But one of the things that I really found early on in Stryker is that they really employ you for your talents and who you are, not so much what you know. And I joined in 2015 as an integration specialist back in kind of like the trauma scene, and then went from that into a regional manager role with field service engineers. That's actually where I met Pete. And since 2018, in my current role, I'm the training manager for the Med-Surg division. So I basically do training right across Australia and New Zealand, and now moving into kind of the APAC region. So there's a lot of diversity that I've had within, and movement I've actually had within Stryker itself. Next slide. Thanks, Pete. So back in 2000, and when I first started in 2020, there was 2015, I should say, in Stryker. There was a couple of people that I'd met that were very similar to me with defence, and we used to do a couple of things together. Like I can Remembrance Day, we'd zip up to each other's office, we'd have a minute silence and things like that. But apart from that, we really didn't have any kind of association. But we found out that we had quite a number of ex-service people and veterans within Stryker itself, and we just organically formed this group as part of our employment resource groups. And our prime thing that we really had with it back then, and that we've continued forward with, is we wanted to cultivate the environment of support and understanding, especially for people that are transitioning out of defence. And we also really wanted to make Stryker South Pacific a really chosen career destination for veterans. And our three main big pillars, as I said, was transitional support, not just for veterans, but for their families as well. Definitely a recruitment and employer of choice. But the other thing we found as we were moving through the years since 2021, when we first launched, was why aren't more companies doing what we're doing, and why aren't more companies actually forming associations and getting groups of veterans together? Because the the benefit that a veteran brings in regards to your adaptability, your sense of teamwork, your ability to work in ambiguity, your ability to go on the fly, and just your general work ethic is absolutely phenomenal. But the big thing that we really wanted to do was really cultivate, support the environment, both internally focused and do things together like we used to, as well as how do we bring the rest of the company involved as well. And thanks, Pete. Next slide. So one of the big things that we've really done as part of an organisation, we just don't have these missions and objectives, but we've got very distinct activities and events that we run each year. Thanks, Pete. If you could jump on the next one. We got on that, Pete. The next slide. Or have I frozen? No, frozen up there. You got us, Pete? All right, sorry guys, I think we've just had a bit of a technical glitch, but what we're actually doing with our activities and events, as I said, when we first started, we really targeted things like Remembrance Day and Anzac Day as just like a group of events that we're running through the company. And our very first Remembrance Day, we had over 600 people. We had a virtual event. We had over 600 people actually join the call, which was just unheard of. And in that event, we also had one of our members, John Lovey, talk about one of the patrols he was on in Afghanistan and really kind of brought it home real what it was like to be serving. And the following events that we've had with each Remembrance Day and Anzac Day, we really brought in other members of Stryker in to talk about their experiences with family members. We found out that, not only do we have this incredible shared history, we've got some family members or members of Stryker whose great-grandfathers, led the charge for Sheba. We have another one whose great-grandfather won a VC in Alistair Tubbs' great-grandfather in Gallipoli. So we've got this incredible shared history. But one of the other big things that we do each year is we send our veterans down to the Australian War Memorial. We get together, we go down, we have a luncheon. We actually have several luncheons. And we have a tour through the Australian War Memorial guided by Matt Anderson, who's the director. And then we do a last post ceremony, the laying of the wreath, which is an incredibly moving experience for those who haven't done it. But last year we actually took it a little bit further and we had a visit to Parliament House. And in that we met up with 5 different politicians and we spoke about what we do as an association. We spoke about what Stryker was. And I suppose the biggest thing we're trying to do with that visit down to Parliament House with meeting the polities was to try and get their support and encouraging other companies to form associations and groups like we have at Stryker to support veterans because of the value the veterans actually bring into an organisation. So Pete, I don't know whether or not we're still jumping with the slides. Yep, fantastic. So that just gives you a couple of photos of some of the stuff we've done. As you can see, top left-hand side is a group of us down in the War Memorial. We went down, we had some of the boys sign the wall, the Taran Cot wall. We do activities like, the Great Adventure Challenge, where we all get together on around and play silly buggers out and running around, and lots of events and black tie things we've had. But as you can see up on that type, on the right-hand side, meeting up with some of the politicians there, we've got Matt Burnell, Pete Wallahan, and the top right one is Luke Gosling in the middle there, sitting down, and I actually served with Luke in 3 hour. But as I said, we get this opportunity not just to support our veterans, but to really make a difference in trying to encourage outside of what we do to have more organisations and companies do what we do and support our veterans. So that's kind of like a little bit about us as an association. We are something that's pretty unique because, as I said, we don't contract back to defence, and we've purely done this to support each other. So, as part of joining Stryker, we've got a definite community. As I said, we've got over 30 members at the moment, and they're really active, and a lot of support and guidance through the city career. So I'll hand back over to Pete to talk a little bit more about what we're actually doing.
Sure, thanks, Matt. So you might be wondering at this point, why do we actually want you? What does a medical device company want with veterans who have transitioned from the Defence Force? So I'm going to tell you about that. I'm also going to tell you about what you can get out of working at a place like Stryker, how you can fit in a medtech or any company, and engagement and a new mission. So let's answer the question, why veterans? most of the veterans at Stryker right now, especially the long-termers like myself and Pops, we got there completely by accident. Maybe it was a chance job ad or someone reached out and told us, but most of us got to Stryker randomly, and we're in the space now where we don't want that to happen anymore. We're searching for talent. And the simple fact is, the qualities you get from serving in defense, they're not really teachable, and you have them in spades. We're not about certificates or qualifications or how many years you've done, in this particular skill. We're about who you are, what talents you have, and what you can do. Defense people, they're mission driven. You guys understand punctuality. You know how to work under pressure. You're adaptable. You can be trusted with autonomy, and you have a sense of contribution that's greater than just yourself. And because of all of those things, you're perfect for working at a place like Stryker. But again, you can fit in any corporate job because of that. So what do you get at a place like Stryker? You've got a tight-knit community. We, like I said, hire based on talent, on personality, on what you can do. So you're not going to be working amongst a bunch of people that just have the right qualifications, but they're passengers. You're going to be working with people that really care about what they do. As I said, everyone's mission driven. We run lean at Stryker, which means that you're not going to be working alongside people that just sit there shuffling papers or watching the clock. There's always something to do, and everyone's driven to do it. Fast paced, because the person at the other end for us always is a patient on the table. And as you know, accidents happen all the time. There is always a patient on the table. Maybe it's a routine surgery, maybe it's a car crash. We don't know, but we're the ones supporting surgeons. So it's a fast-paced environment, whether you work in human resources or whether you're right there next to the surgeon. And because of that, what you do matters. You'd be going from being a defender in the sense that you're defending the country, you're defending lives, to now there's another life.
I was Stryker is a vehicle life.
I'll keep going. Now there's another life at the other end that you're helping. So what you do is tangible, it matters. One of the things you might be wondering is how you actually fit into the grand scheme of things. In a place like Stryker, just like a lot of other companies, there's really no difference between manufacturing a bullet and getting it all the way to the barrel of a rifle to a hip stem, which is what you see in the middle there, getting that from manufacturing all the way into a patient. You've got your research that creates it. You've got the manufacturing, you've got the logistics, you've got the regulatory people who have to get it through government. You've got the sales people. There's people on at every step of the way doing these things, whether it's a piece of military equipment or a piece of civilian equipment. And the simple fact is, you guys can slot in anywhere that you've worked in the military in a civilian environment. And odds are you're going to do it better than most civvies because, like I said, you've got all those soft skills that are so hard to teach. The other thing you might be thinking is, I got into defense because I didn't want to work in the corporate world. I don't want to wear a suit and tie. I don't want to work in a cubicle. But the simple fact is, you don't have to do any of that. The corporate world isn't that black and white. I started at Stryker as a field service engineer when I got out of defense. I have no technical background. I've got no uni degrees in engineering or anything like that. Stryker hired me, trained me because they thought I had the right attributes. So I started out fixing things in hospitals. And then you see that stretcher in the middle. I'm sure you've all seen that on the news because they're in literally every single ambulance in the country. So just after I started as a field service engineer in New South Wales, I ended up in the rollout of those stretchers across every ambulance service in the country. One day I was in Sydney, the next I'd be in Townsville. I'd be in Adelaide teaching mechanics how to fix it. I'd be alongside the sales rep in a presentation. my career at Stryker has been so varied. And from there, that's me winning an award, I think it was 2 years ago, as a contract specialist. So from electronic warfare, signals intelligence, to field service, to tenders and contracts, incredibly varied. And tenders and contracts, yes, I wear a shirt and pants, I work in an office, but at this point, I chose that and I love it. And so to extend that, I'm going to show you just a few of our veterans at Stryker and what they do. So there's obviously me at the top, but the next one is Callan. You're going to hear from him in a little bit. Cal's one of our great success stories. He was at 2RAR, finished off as a mortarman. I think he was corporal, pops, something thereabouts. And he started in the warehouse and now he's our national distribution manager. We have Pops, obviously, who's given you his story. Chris Harding, he's been at Stryker 7 years. He joined us from the Navy and he's chosen to stay in the field service pathway. So he started out just as a field service engineer. I say just, probably not the right word, but then he moved into training and now he's lead trainer for all of Asia Pacific for that particular franchise. Tamps, Scott Tampolini, he's one of the best examples of what I was talking about before. Tamps thought that all he was good for was to become a copper, so he did join the South Australian Police Force. And now after a few years at Stryker, he's a trauma territory manager. Now what that means is he's the guy standing right next to a surgeon in a trauma theatre telling the surgeon, you should, sorry, 1 second, telling the surgeon, you should pick this one of our products, use that size and put it in that way. Because if you think about it, being a sniper team leader in a place like Afghanistan, it's not just about shooting a gun. There's so many skills and soft skills that he has, which make him perfect for the role he's in now. But the simple fact is, most people don't think of that because you've never had someone show you, hey, here's how your skills might translate. And so to finish off, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about engagement and why Stryker is, again, such a great place for you guys to come to work, and hopefully you'll put in an application after this. So if you've never heard of Gallup, they run surveys and they've done so for every year for the last 25 years or so on workforces around the world and in Australia. And the typical average, this doesn't change much year to year. You have only around a quarter of your workforce that's engaged in their job. That means they find meaning in their work, they're looking forward to coming into work, as opposed to around 60% that is sort of just punching the clock. Yeah, I'm here, I get a paycheck, it's all right. And then you've got the last 20% that are actively disengaged, don't like their job, and are pretty much trying to make things worse for everyone. Now, if you look at this graph, Stryker is one of the companies represented in the blue line at the top, where essentially these stats flipped completely. So 60 to 70% of our workforce is engaged at work. It's a rare few that aren't engaged. And often that can be just down to the situation at the time or whatever. But the simple fact is you'd be coming into a workplace where the vast majority of people are going to be psyched to come into work alongside you. And so that's the end of my pitch. I'm going to hand over to Callan. He recorded this before our presentation because his wife surprised him with an impromptu trip overseas. And he's going to tell you about his journey from Army to Stryker.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks everyone for having me. My name's Callan Gardner, and thanks for the opportunity today to share my story and how I joined Stryker. So a bit of background about me. I'm the current National Distribution Manager here at Stryker. I'm based in Sydney. Previously in Defence, I was at 2RAR infantry. Just before I left, I was in the mortar platoon. I had one trip overseas, 2011, 2012 as a part of MTF3. it was a pretty exciting trip. I got back, sort of spent a year or so in the mortar platoon and left defence. And sort of for me, it started I left defence in a pretty good spot, but sort of left it where it was. And then fast forward 10 years now, over 10 years, and now I'm in my little family here. I've got two little boys and a great wife, and I'm now living in Sydney, post up in the hot Townsville. So for me, my journey with Stryker, it sort of started really back in 2013 when I decided to move to Sydney and try to chase my then girlfriend. And I had no idea what Stryker was. Really logistics, and as probably most people know, I didn't know anything about it, but I just knew they would drop off some banjos or some, the odd bit of cordial here and there outfield. I really didn't care for logistics too much. And I actually fell into Stryker as a temp contractor, really just to get some money because I was playing football at the time. And locally, one of the guys said they were hiring. I said, great. So I sort of started that journey with Stryker, became full-time and started 2014, just picking and packing orders, really learning the business from the ground up. Back then, it was quite a small business. That was 10 years ago. Small comparatively now. We had maybe 6 or 7 people in the team. And I really, coming full-time, I was learning a corporate environment that I wasn't really aware of. And I've got a buffering, and I call it corporate polish. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit, but it's something that I had to learn as I went. You can't just keep swearing and bring some of those, you've got to watch how there's HR involved now. There's all these different things that I wasn't really aware of, but I had really great leaders that helped me sort of navigate that. And a company like Stryker, they want you to succeed. It's something they're probably not used to coming out of defence, where it's always a challenge. You actually get managers that want you to do really well and are there to help you and provide feedback, which is really good. 2015, I became the outbound lead. This role was made for me. We didn't have any managers at the time. And I basically moved into roles after roles after roles. In 2017, you can see an image there at the bottom right. That's our current warehouse at the moment, which is a fully automated warehouse. It was actually the first in Stryker globally to go live, which is pretty cool considering it was a YouTube video I showed our senior directors at the time. I got to be a part of the project, and remember, I didn't even know what logistics was. So this is about a business that looks after you, talent-driven, strengths, and trusted I knew what I was doing and trusted in my process. And move on to 2018, and now I'm the current national distribution manager with a team of 70 people. Started with 7 and now 70. So this is a little bit why I stay. I spent a while thinking about this because it's hard to put into just one slide, but I tried to make it pretty straightforward. I think the mission at Stryker is to make healthcare better. We're not shipping iPhones, I'm doing something now that actually impacts the community. And I didn't actually realize having structure, we're from structure back in defense. That's all we had. And the mission is something that I align to. And then I have this structure that is just our guiding path, which is really important. And our business lives and breathes it. It's on our walls everywhere. It's part of our culture, which is that second piece. I've got the SSPVA team here, which is the team sort of supporting this this whole meeting, and they're from all around Army, Navy, Air Force. That we get to we've built this team now where we can bring hard conversations and bring our experiences and talk about maybe the corporate life and some of the challenges we're having. And then my current team, which is, like I mentioned, 70 plus people of just really hardworking people that want to be there, which is, as we know, isn't always the case in defence. People you're like, how does this person even get up in the morning? So the biggest one out of all is Stryker doesn't care about what's on paper. Technically, I shouldn't be in this role. Like, I've got no experience prior to manage multiple distribution teams, you know, people managers, all that sort of stuff, is because they just focus on talent and what my talent from defense brings. You know, my transition was, I didn't really reflect on it until recently, when we were creating these slides. Like, it was probably better than most, but I had to learn the hard way. The importance of corporate polish. I'd never even heard of this. I sort of made it up myself that someone said, "Oh, Callan, you need more polish." And I said, "What? Of what?" You know, corporate. You can't come and swear in a meeting or do something. And, you know, that's something I'm still learning to this day. But it's that piece of navigating that is such an important part in how you recognize the value in your brand. The brand thing's like people say it becomes very corny, but the value in brand on how your skills are transferable from defense is really important, which is your brand. So, you know, I've got a few there how I did it. I've got my strengths that I brought were hard work. I can communicate in chaos, naturally lead from the front. I want to get the job done all the time. I trust myself to make the right decision. I've got high integrity. You know, these are all things that companies love, but you don't realize you've got it until you're doing it. And the biggest one that no one will be used to is you've got leaders that want you to succeed. You know, it's when you've got good managers and they want you to do well, because then they do well. And it's a team environment, which is massive. That's something I found so different. I'm still friends with the manager who hired me to this day. We only caught up recently in his 12, 13 years here at Stryker. So it's something it takes a little while to get used to, that people that want to help, but it's pretty cool. And the biggest learning I've probably got is be open to the feedback. You know, you got to take a couple on the chin when it comes to corporate polish, recognizing you can learn from everyone, and you reflect a lot, and you can really keep building that, you know, so-called brand.
Apologies, we had a pretty abrupt cut off there. Okay, and I'll now hand over to Anna Butler.
Awesome. Thanks, Cal. I know you're not here, but thank you, Cal. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Pop. So effectively, what I'm here to do today is to wrap up today's session, let you know what you can expect moving forward. So for me, I work in our HR team, but I also am very much a proud member of our Veterans Association. My husband, until very recently, served in the Army, and this organisation welcomed me with open arms, but as did the organisation Stryker. So you've heard a lot of sort of common themes here. I think what I would really love everyone to relay is obviously some idea that Stryker obviously looks at people and their backgrounds. Obviously, we do look for qualifications, but we have a very intrinsic talent philosophy. You know, we define talent as the natural capacity for excellence, regardless of the field you've previously worked in. And so we partner with the Gallup organization to really make sure that we hire people who have who are intrinsically motivated, who have the courage to speak up, who have discipline to manage their own workload, who have the capacity to think, the capacity to build relationships, and really clear values based on things like integrity and honesty. And so what you've had today is you've heard from three of Stryker's top performers here, where they've had the opportunity to run at their role and perform, and really to overperform. The other thing as well is like Pete referenced, we have in my profession in HR the highest engagement levels I've ever seen, but we also provide really clear pathways to success that, unlike the ADF, are based on merit and success in roles. So we also have a very strong history of promoting people from within. So I think, a really key takeaway we want for everyone today to have is confidence in the background and your achievements within the military and their capacity to be really quite easily transferred into this corporate space. And within Stryker, what you're going to see is a really a clear or an increasingly better understanding of our managers have about people who have previously served in the ADF. So we have 2 further sessions to come. So we would love you all to join us for the further sessions, and Jason will be able to push out some further communications. Our next session will be hearing more from veterans about their experience and how they transitioned. I love Cal lovingly talking about HR and corporate polish. This session, we're planning for it to be super authentic. We don't need any BS. We want to be really real with people on what they would do differently, lessons they learned, times they might have failed, and how that can help you in your career journey. We can't underestimate moving out of the Defence Forces, if that's what you want to do, is a really large step, and you're going to have some people there who can tell you a really real account of that. So that's going to be our next session. And then the third session to close out our speaker series in partnership with Soldier On is going to be kind of, my wheelhouse, and with some of my colleagues, all very practical. How can we get some really punchy resumes? How can we start talking about what Cal was speaking about there? Branding. How can I talk about what I did when I was deployed, or what I did when I was in Townsville? How can I make that applicable, in a service center, in a warehouse, in an office? How can we make that applicable? And would be doing a session very much based on applying for roles and interviewing in roles. So that's our plan today, and what we would love for you to walk away from today's session is knowing a bit about Stryker, having some confidence to back yourself and what you've done up until this stage, and ideally, like Pete said, we're going to be shameless. Jump on our careers board, see what roles we've got going, reach out to one of us. We're more than happy to talk you through these roles. Pete, if you could move us to the next slide, we do have a QR code here as well. Please scan this and jump onto our careers website. Pete, would you like to close us out, or Jason?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump right in there. Sorry, Pete. You can
Go for it.
have your time in the sun with Q&A in a sec. But look, this is some really great, valuable stuff. I mean, this presentation has been really wonderful, and I'd say that everyone attending has taken away some really some valuable takeaways. I just want to make reference to a couple of things that really stood out to me. Obviously, the first part that really stood out to me is obviously your mission and objectives. I really love the fact that, obviously together with our veterans, we cultivate an environment of support and understanding, which is so crucial to enabling our veterans and their families to transition into a civvy workforce. And I love the idea that, Matthew talking about, going to Parliament and talking with politicians about, creating, like a veterans committee or a veterans support base, so that others, as they transition and move into this space, well, it's like you're walking into an environment with, that welcome and open arms experience. And the other thing that I really wanted to look at too was I really love the idea of the corporate polish that Callan was talking about. And, it's one thing that we promote a lot and we talk about is, what is your brand, and trying to help shape our veterans understand who they are, because obviously, as we will all agree, that once you serve and then you step out of service, then your identity is rocked. You're attached to the uniform, but then trying to unpack, well, who am I? What do I look like? Where can I go? Where do I belong? So that personal branding is, trying to unpack that is really powerful. So thank you very much for that. Let's hand it over to you, Peter, if you want to open up the floor.
Sure. Yeah. Jason, if we can stop recording, guys, we're more than happy to answer any questions you might have.